Good morning, everyone. I'm Lexi Dearborn. I'm the chair of the Landscape Ontario Designers Sector Group. So we started about a year ago, and they have become very popular. I believe we were just talking, we have over 160 people registered for today. I'm going to introduce you to Dave Wright, and I printed it off, so I make sure I've got all these right, Dave. So Dave, you are a CLD. You are an OALA, so you're a landscape architect.
Yes, I am.
You're a member of CSLA, which is the Canadian Landscape Architects,
Yep.
correct? And what is LICM?
I don't know. I
And
didn't
then
put that down.
and then,
That could be
then
landscape
behind it,
industries, like landscape industry manager.
oh, manager, okay. And a GOM. What was a GOM?
I don't know.
You have so many initials,
I
like
could have all
maybe
kinds of acronyms. I like to make them up sometimes.
you're ready to be a doctor. So anyway, Dave is the owner of Wright Landscape Services, and you are in
I'm in Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo.
Waterloo. So Um, so no further ado, I'm going to let Dave take over. He has a presentation and lots of questions coming up. And Dave, it's all yours. I'm going to mute.
All right, thank you. And I guess this all started with some conversations at the designers conference last year, where we were really talking, and I noticed in a group discussion that no one around the table that I was sitting with was comfortable even talking about grading. And that really surprised me because I love grading. And it's one of those things that to me it comes across very easy to do. So I kind of dove into the why is this such a problem? And I remember back to school, some of my classmates struggling with technical parts of the profession. And then getting into the profession, I realized that landscape architects aren't even allowed to do grading plans in a lot of jurisdictions. It's the engineers that do it. So you get civil engineers are doing all the grading plans, and landscape architects, obviously, we review it. But it's not something that we're supposed to review the drawings to make sure that it works. But we don't actually prepare the drawings in a lot of cases. Getting into more site work and that kind of thing, obviously, then there's grading plans and so on that landscape architects do to prepare. But usually in a lot of jurisdictions, grading is not allowed by landscape architects. And that's because we've messed up in the past. And so they put it to the engineers who it's what they do. So what I'm gonna do is go through a bunch of this is a lot of there's no research involved in this. This is my opinions and my observations from 30 years. I've been out of school now for 30 years, so a 30-year career. A lot of it is guesses at why this may be the case. And you're welcome to disagree with me. I actually welcome that because a good discussion is, that's disagreement turns into discussion. So I'm going to talk about why designers struggle with grading and what I can do to help overcome that struggle. We're going to talk a bit about what tools do we need to do good grading plans, what are the basics of gradings, and how can a designer become a grading expert? And then I'll go a bit over just kind of summarize things at the end. So why do designers struggle with grading? Um, what I struggle with in the designer's struggle is grading is simple. Water flows downhill. So um, the concept is really easy. The step is how to, I guess, get through it. And it's my opinion that a lot of, there's left brain and right brain thinking. Left is logic and right is creativity. Everybody has a different um, combination of left and right brain. Um, and I think that a lot of designers just wanted to design. Grading is technical. Grading is left brain. Designing is right brain. And I think that someone who is super creative and they really want to be, they're all hung up in their design. These technical aspects become very hard to put together and um I guess to in my opinion make a better design having this technical side to it. Grading is math. Um, creativity is, creative writing and English and that kind of thing. So the people that struggled with math and physics and chemistry in high school, there you're struggling with grading and the technical aspects of landscape design. Grading can be hard. I've had some real challenging projects where I'm trying to kind of figure out what's going on, and the solution when you take a step back and look at it is water flows downhill. So one of my observations is that the schools don't teach it very well. It comes down to having instructors who are grading experts. A lot of the schools, and I was at um, a landscape or at University of Guelph the other day. I was at an alumni meeting, and we were talking about some of the difficulties that we're seeing with grads coming out of the University of Guelph, and how can we make it better? And this falls right into it. It's the level of um, technical training that the students are getting in school. Um, I remember the grading fundamentals from school, but I don't know how it was taught to us, and I actually don't recall whether I had a good teacher or not. I do remember though, as a child, playing in the gravel yard out behind our house at this time of year, digging trenches and getting the water to flow from that big puddle over to that big puddle over there. And I spent hours playing in the mud, realizing that, well, the whole time I was just grading. So looking back at that, I obviously have had an interest in grading for years and years and years. I think that designers, for the most part, just want to design, that the pure designers want to design. Um, are we seeing the whole picture? Or is it just the design that's in our heads? Um, and what's more important, and this is where some people will disagree with me, what is more important, the design or the project? Um, I tend to go with project, whereas some designers would think, well, the design is the most important part. Well, for me, it's building a project that holds together and works. And that may actually affect the quality of the design. I wouldn't, maybe not the quality, but the call it creativity of the design, because you have to give up some of that creativity to make things work. And I think that might be one of the the conflicts that happen that result in a right-brained person who is big in the design really understanding the grading aspect of it, because it's very technical. And I'm thinking we can break designers into two groups: creative designers and technical designers. And I'm sure that there's some designers who are excellent at both, and that's what makes them so successful. Originally, this was supposed to be an in-person thing, so I was going to ask for a show of hands here who thought who was who, but we're not going to do that right now because now we're online. What can I do to help overcome the struggle? Um, I look at myself and I don't see myself as a great designer. I'm not, well, creativity wise. I make things work. I'm definitely in the technical designer side of things. Um, so I received my BLA with my Bachelor of Landscape Architecture at Guelph 30 years ago now. And my thesis was on, let me just make this work here. Here we go. My thesis was on a cluster housing project on this site, which is out near St. Clements in Waterloo region. It didn't look like this when I was in school. It was actually, there was a big chunk of here that was all farmland, and there was a big ridge that went across here. It's now a hole in the ground. And what I did was I spent hours digitizing this. And this was back in the days before you could, get it to scan it and read it. I had to go through using Auto LandCAD and using a digital mouse thing create I had to trace every contour on this site to make my base plan in order to do my thesis. So again, one of the reasons why I think I've become an expert in grading is that I can look at a grading plan and I see it in 3D. When I'm looking at the contours, it just pops up in my head in 3D. I started my design career, my office career in with Stantec, which is now Stantec. It was called something else then, and this was one of my first projects. Um, this was a farmer's market thing, and there was a parking lot basically with some planting around it. But we'll get back to this in a little bit. I'm going to talk about a design problem that I ran into on this project. So then I went on to, so what I'm doing here is telling you how I became an expert on grading. So this project here had an issue that we'll talk about in a minute that really made me look back at, yeah, knowing what I know now, I never would have made that mistake. I worked in Houston, Texas for SWA Group, and this section of the Buffalo Bayou from this Lakeside Country Club all the way out here would flood these neighborhoods. And I spent a year basically drawing contours, and we created inline detention basins. I was working with our client was the Harris County Flood Control District, and we were working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I drew a pile of contours, and I got to understand how water flows, how it sits, and how to make it, to keep the neighborhood from flooding. To give you an idea, the bottom of this channel was 75 feet above sea level, and we were 45 minutes from the coast of the Gulf Coast. So pretty flat grading, super important in flat areas. I then moved on to, there's another project I did was the FedEx headquarters in Collierville, Tennessee. I didn't um, I didn't realize it was such a big picture. I looked it up on Google Maps the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I've never actually seen it. I worked in Vancouver, built this park here. Drainage grading was easy on that because you're not going very far. You're just going out here. You got to get the water away from the buildings, the water away from the structures out to the out to the harbor. So not going very far. I worked on projects like this, George Wayneborn Park, flat section in there, had to deal with underground drainage and so on. What do we do? What tools do we use to um, do our grading plans? Um, there's the old school transit level with a stick and level. It takes two people to do it. Um, we've got lasers. A lot of my guys on site are using lasers to set their grades when they're building stuff. Again, well, that's a one-man operation because one person is holding the stick and the laser is showing your level. I use a zip level. I love the zip level. It has its own problems, but I mean, it's great for figuring out, the grades on a project, on a simple project, and doing the layout and having a bigger project. I'm going to hire a surveyor to do the work. I have used and I've purchased the Mosher, but I don't trust it. I've run into situations where, we did the same and we did 3 projects with it last year. It's great for locating the trees on a project and things on a project that don't have straight lines that you can't, you need to locate it on the plan. But for grading and elevations, I didn't trust it for a minute because I had it. We did 3 projects, like I said, and we did both of them with both the zip level and Mosher. And I trusted the numbers I was getting out of the zip level, but not the ones I was getting out of the Mosher. So I'm sure other people have had better success with us. I know it's all in technique. But anyways, I don't trust the Mosher, and I'd love to, but I'm not there. So back to this project. I spent a whole day once. I had a base plan that was given to me by the a survey team, so actual surveyors at Stantec. They gave me the base plan to work this all out. And I spent a whole day working on where is this grade going? Well, it was all sloping like this. But for the life of me, I could not get the water out of this parking lot. I couldn't figure out how is this working. So luckily, my office was only 2 blocks away. I got up out of my chair and I went down to site and I wandered around and I looked and I looked and I looked. There was a catch basin right there that the surveyors missed because it was under a car. That was the problem. But if I hadn't gotten out of my chair and gone to the site and looked at it, I would have known that those hours that I wasted trying to figure out the grading to get the water to flow out of this parking lot, it was supposed to flow to a catch basin that was missed on the survey. So um, sometimes it's just knowing what's going on and having a look will get you what you need. So what I'm going to do now is go through a project, basically from beginning to end of a grading plan. Now, when we do a design for a client, so my business is a design, build, and maintenance. When we do a design for clients, we do charge for our designs, right? From it's a separate package. You buy your design services, and we always, 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 always do a grading plan with our design. I think the base of every great design starts with the grading plan because you got to know what's going on. So I always ask the client, I know this is in upside down, but it'll make sense later when I get into some other drawings. I always ask the client for the site plan they got when they bought the house. It should be in your legal documents. It doesn't always come with grading points. A lot of times it shows the dimensions off of the corners of the house at 90 degrees to the property lines. But it shows you how to locate the house on the plan. This one, we had the benefit of actually getting the proposed grades, which are in black, and the actual grades, which are in red. So we were able to transpose those onto our drawing, on our base drawing, and have solid grades to work with from the beginning. But all we have is corner elevations, corner of the house, corner of the property line, bottom and top of slope. And one thing I want to point out is you have to know how to read these drawings. Um, Slopes are always indicated like this. Well, not always, but often a slope, engineers will show top and bottom of slope, and then they'll use this symbol, which is a short dash and a long dash, to show the a slope. And the short dashes are always at the top of the slope. You can see this front yard here has some slope around the outside. And usually there's somewhere on the plan that will say that this slopes like this do not exceed a 1 to 3. A 1 to 3 slope, which is 1 foot in grade change over a 3 foot or 3 meters, 1 meter over 3 meters. Um, that is a slope that you can cut with a lawnmower. That's a slope that you can walk on, not necessarily comfortably, but you can walk on it. You get into other slopes that are steeper and they're less manageable. One of the things you got to do when you're reading a survey is look for where the property lines are, grading at the corner. Um, but you also want to look for easements. Um, Sometimes there's a utility easement or a access easement. Larger properties may have, sometimes there's even an easement for a neighboring property to access their property through yours. You'll run into that in townhouse projects as well. So you got to understand how to read this in order to get the information you need to put your base plan together. So this is a little project where we were asked to do a backyard. It's in where is this? In Fergus. So this is what we got off of that plan, minus these grades in the middle. We had to go out and shoot these grades. We did that with a zip level. And you can see I'm trying to figure out we did do this as a grid. It's not showing as that right now. I guess it goes across here. But these were all marked out so that we could find the steeper your site, the more information you need. And the more changes in the site, the more information you need, the more internal points you need to shoot. So what I like to do on this is I always start from a point. It could be the sill. This is the back door sill. The door sill is not gonna move. So that becomes my 0, 0. I want to find the lowest point and the highest point. So there's our high point, there's our low point. We know that that's the way the grades are running just by looking at the design or looking at the grades. So that's going to affect how we're going to what we can do on this project. So we've got, and I can't, this is -7 feet because it's -7 something. I can't see it because of things on the top of my screen, but we're 7 feet below this door sill. This was like a half height walkout. So that's going to be a 3 foot something difference in height from our high point to our low point. So we've got this slope going across the yard. This client wanted to, sorry, I'm just reading some notes here so I can get ahead. This client wanted to build they had a small deck that came off the back here and then just an empty yard. And they wanted to add in a deck space, a hot tub space, a lounge space, a fire pit, and then some planting and a shed. So a lot to fit into a little yard. We shot these grades so that we could figure out where these other elements go into it. You might think that, something that's a gentle slope, just get a 20-foot grid to come up with your grading. And you just mark it, measure it off, and you mark. I do all of my grade. I don't know how many people of you are using the Remarkable pad. I love it. It's like writing on paper, only it's not. It's electronic, and you can put it in your computer when you get back to the office real quick. So I will do actually different layers on my Remarkable pad, and I'll show the extents. I can actually put a PDF base plan into my Remarkable pad and then draw on top of it. So I can get dimensions, I can get my grading points. For something that has a complicated, I may go a 10-foot grid. I don't think I'd ever go 5 foot, but certainly a 10-foot grid for a more complicated slope, 20 foot for something gentle. And I get all that information so that I can work out my conceptual plan. So this is a suburban backyard. I'm not quite sure. It's not a walkout. It's halfway out of the ground. I don't know, it's a half rise or something like that. But this is basically this door sill was about 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground. It's kind of at eye level. And there was a big window here that was kind of lower than that. So just kind of an interesting site, but tiny. The client wanted to replace the deck off the kitchen, the hot tub. I went through that before. The other issue is that to the bottom side of this drawing, a few yards away, there was a 4-story townhouse complex with view directly into their backyard. So privacy was important. This project is in Center Wellington, and they don't like, and so this is another thing you need to know when you get into a grading plan is what does the municipality allow? So Center Wellington, and among other municipalities, they don't allow disturbing the grade within 2 feet of the property line. Back in the day, we used to say, oh, you just don't disturb the property line. So we could dig right to the property line and you build a retaining wall. You put the back of the retaining wall tight against the property line. And but now they want to have a 2 foot buffer, a 2 foot grading buffer everywhere. You're seeing that in more and more municipalities. Make sure that you know what your municipality, the municipality you're working in, allows for this. So we need to take that into consideration. We need to keep a 2 foot grading buffer around everything. Where are we here? So now you work out your design concept based on, you have some general idea of what's happening with the grades here. So this is what we came up with. So this says all of our elements. And again, we do a grading plan for every drawing. So we've got a deck, a multi-level deck, so the barbecue deck, this deck here, which allows you to step into the hot tub. So all these are different levels. We come down onto this lower lounge patio. and you're stepping back up to a fire pit patio, and you're stepping up to a hot tub patio here. So how do you come up with all these grade changes and so that they make sense? Because right now we're looking at a drawing that's flat. It's a flat drawing. But in reality, it's tipping from here to here. So where do you know where to start? So you got to start somewhere. We know I want to take this deck and I want to have the top surface of that deck tucked right in underneath the door sill. So basically there's a 2-inch step down to this deck. Some people ask to do it flush with the sill. I don't like to do that. I like to have that 2-inch lip. I know it's a trip hazard, but it is a drainage thing as well. You don't want water coming off your deck and flowing back into your kitchen or your living room. So 2-foot step down on here, or sorry, not 2-foot, 2-inch step. Basically the door sill. You're stepping over the track on your sliding door. I always build deck steps with a 7.5-inch tread, or sorry, 7.5-inch rise. And the reason why I use 7.5 inches, because that is the dimension of a 2x8. So my risers are all 2x8s. My treads are 2x6s. So now you have an 11-inch tread and you've got a 7.5-inch rise. Makes construction super simple. You may want wider. Your design brain may be saying, oh, I want nice wide treads and that kind of thing. But you know what? When it comes down to it, you want this as buildable and as easy as possible to build. So your 2x8s, 2x6s. So we know that we got 7.5-inch risers. So you take your distance between your door sill and the base, and you come up with how many steps you need. So you're taking whatever that difference is, and you're dividing it by 7 inches. So 7 inches is 0.625 of a foot. So when we worked it all out, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Really easy, round number. 10 steps down got us to this point here, which magically, this grade right here, the 6.37 is the height of the existing grade. Now, by working down 10 risers, you're at 6.25. So we're off by 0.1 of an inch or 0.1 of a foot, which is an inch and a half, 2 inches. So that's perfect. Now we know where to start.
Dave, can I just, so I'm just, we've got a few questions about
Sure.
the red and the blue. So the red is the
Yeah, okay. So there
existing
we go.
elevations.
That's right. In my
Okay.
drawings, I always show existing elevations on a 45-degree angle,
Okay.
and I show my proposed grades at a, well, whatever that is, but your 180, your normal rating. But I
Horizontal.
but I show that in my in my in my legend on my drawing. It's not showing here for presentation's sake, but
Okay.
always some people will put a square box around the grades that are proposed. But that's how I show them. Um, and my designer, my design assistant who works in my office, she likes to show them in different colors, which is great because it shows up really easily. Now, obviously, for you folks, it's showing up really easy. So what you want to do on
So
these,
can I just say, so the proposed are actually how you see the levels work out in your head, correct? It's actually starting
well,
from your 0, 0 benchmark and then what you're seeing as you build it in your head. Like, so you're going to step down to here and then step
yeah,
down to there.
but these are actually grades the guys are going to use in the field to build it. But
Okay.
this will go through many iterations. This is actually the finished iteration. Well, I guess yeah, it's close to being the building level, but you're going to at least do the marks because you're constantly changing them. You're going through because you're fiddling back and forth. Is this 9 steps? Is it 10 steps? And then when you get down to this level, so we know then where our starting point is. How do we get from here back up to here again? And what grades do we need to make patios at? This patio, we want it to drain. So really, you're starting at the bottom, and that's an important thing, starting at the bottom. and working our way up. So we know this is our low point back here. We got to have a 2-foot buffer strip, grading strip, swale around the outside edge. We want to get water, any water that's on these hard surfaces to flow towards the low point. So 1.5% is about the minimum you want to go on pavers. You don't want to go much more over 2%. And the reason why you choose, so 2% on pavers on a patio, 2% you can see, you feel it. 1.5%, you don't really see or follow it. You don't want, you can do walkway, you can do 5%, 10% on walkways. 10% is getting a little crazy. But I mean, you want the water to flow, but you also want to be able to sit there in a chair without feeling like you're falling over. So I choose, most of my stuff is 1.5%. So I worked my grading coming this way and realizing, okay, I'm going to go down 1.5% from this point, and that's going to fix my bottom corner. And then coming up at 1.5%, the longest distance, because your shorter distances are going to be a bit more than that 1.5%, but you want your longest distance to be 1.5%. And you want to check these grades. You want to check your short grades, because if they start to get too much, it's going to be uncomfortable. So because I have a step here, and you want a step to be level, we're going to come up at 1.5%. We're now at 6.13. And now we're going to just say we're going to be 6.13 right across here, so that this can be a level step. You're stepping off your upper step onto the bottom, and it's level all the way around. You want steps to be level. You don't want them to be cockeyed. Becomes a trip hazard, becomes code issues in bigger projects. You want it to be level. So that actually simplifies this, because you've got this whole corner here is all level. But because we're sloping here at 1.5%, we know then that this is going to be a little bit more than 1.5%, but that's okay. We then want to slope this. So we can raise up this corner. And so we're coming in the same direction across this lot from our low point to our high point. We're coming across the same angle, basically. So the high point of this patio is going to be over in here, again, sloping at 1.5%. So the water's going to flow. It's going to flow basically where these lines are going, but it's going to kind of meander this way onto this patio, onto this patio. And then when we grade this out, this will all swale out and run out to a catch basin that's on the next property over. But we always want to get all the water to run from a high point to the low point and avoid things like, so this is the next step that you have to watch out for, is, sorry, I just got to get to my point in my notes here. We've got a tight space here. We can't just build a shed pad, and not have it undermine. So we're gonna have to put a retaining wall in here. So we put a little wall around our shed pad, and now the water can go past it. You can have a foot of this shed pad exposed on the backside. It's flush on the front, but that way you can get water to run around without undermining this pad. This has to be level here. The grade is sloping, the existing grade is sloping away underneath the deck. We need to have a retaining wall to retain this edge of this level piece where the hot tub pad is. So this hot tub pad would be like, I don't know, 30 inches or so below this. And the idea is that you can step off into the hot tub without having a big step in. So you want to be stepping from a similar height to a similar height in your hot tub. So it's a matter of finding, you can make this lower by taking out some risers here and adding them here. You can make it higher by doing the opposite. But you want to talk to your client about what hot tub it is, approximately how tall it is, approximately where are the steps in it, so that you can line this up so that you're similar heights. So we've got these pads are all kind of figured out. We're going to, in doing our design, or our grading plan, we're going to mark out all of the corners. We're going to put grading points on every corner after we figure them all out and we've done all the interpolation. So the most important calculation you need is rise over run, create is slope. So difference in elevation times slope. I have to show you I have to write it down to do it. But it's your rise over run, which is difference in elevation over length equals slope. It's math. It goes back to high school math. If you struggled with that, knowing that calculation is always the same, you can figure out a grading point between here by knowing the difference in the elevation equals slope times length, or your difference in elevation between this point divided by the length equals the slope. So it's cross multiplying, knowing it's a bit of math, and that's a whole nother subject. But I mean, it's that interpolation is going to help you create what all these grades are around the edges. We know that this one is equal all the way around. We know that this has to be level because it's a hot tub. You don't want it, you won't want that sitting on a cockeye here. Then we're trying to use up the leftover space. So we're going to just grade this out to match. So this grade is actually coming up a little bit. It's coming up about 1.5 inches on the foundation here to match this. We're going to add in, I think these are just accent boulders here. These ones here, we're adding some boulders in to actually retain the edge of the step. A lot of times I've seen, this is level, this is all sloping off, and now we've exposed the base under the corner of this patio right here, or under the step. You got to retain it. You got to be, this isn't flat. This has different heights on it, so we got to watch out where that is. We've got leftover space, so we're going to grade that off at a maximum of 3-to-1 slope. You want 3-to-1 because it's comfortable. You can walk on it. If it's going to be more than 3-to-1, you add some boulders in, and then you can drop the grade on the backside of the boulder, and you can get it back to that 3-to-1. You want all of this water in these beds to be running into your swale and running out to the outlet on the edge of the property. So we've got multi-levels in here. It's following the grade, and we've got multi-levels going up to this door. It sounds complicated, but once you understand sort of how to use the existing grade, you can make it, we could have done this all at one level, but then we'd have a big retaining wall over here. So by doing it this way, we actually made the project more cost effective for the client because we don't have to build retaining walls. Retaining walls cost more money than patios. We could have, having this all at one level, we could have been at the higher level, and then, trying to figure out how we're going to get down to this lower level. Working with the grade is going to make it maybe it's not a better design, but it's a more buildable design, and it's a more usable design. Is it as creative it could be? I'm sure there's other ways to do. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. So, by doing it this way, this worked for us. This worked for the client. They loved it. This is now a 3-phase project that we're starting in a couple of weeks.
Dave?
Yeah.
I got a whole bunch of questions. So
sure.
I'm actually going to open it up to the people who've asked the questions, if you don't mind, if they're still kind of hanging about.
Yep.
So Melanie, you had a question. Where are you? You had a question about municipalities and a 2-foot setback to the property line. Are you here? Okay, here was the question. Most municipalities do not allow for any construction materials within a 2-foot setback, or Oakville has this has a very rigid swale requirement.
Yeah, I've run into the Oakville issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to follow the rules.
Got to follow the rules.
Got to follow the rules.
So we've got Great Lakes Landscape. In the 2 foot grading buffer, are there any issues with patio to property line and the base construction extending the base for requirement edge support? I think I've got that
I think
right.
I know what you mean there. Can you put your edge support and base in that 2 foot buffer? It depends on the municipality. You have to talk to someone at the municipality to find out what they allow because they're all different. It's written the same in the bylaws. When I read the bylaws, Oakville's is exactly, well, maybe not Oakville's, but Center Wellington's is exactly the same as Woolwich, which is exactly the same as Waterloo. But it's how is that by or whoever's dealing with it, how's that building official, how's that planning official dealing with it and interpreting it. um, Center Wellington lets you build a deck over top of that space, but you can't put hardscape, so you'd have to leave a 2 foot space in your heart, so you'd have to have some kind of soft, or not
Right,
necessarily soft, but river rock or something along those edges to create the swale. Some
right,
municipalities let you go with patio right to the edge, but they won't let you build a wall in that space. So you have
right.
to ask the questions. And the only way to, I guess, ask the right to get the answer you want, the quality of your answer is, directly the same as the quality of your question. So you got to ask good questions, understanding what materials are allowed in that 2 foot buffer.
Yeah, I would, and I'm going to just add to that if you don't mind. I think as a designer, one of the greatest things I've done is actually made friends with the building department
Absolutely.
in our area. It's really nice.
Always know somebody in the department.
Absolutely.
Get to know them,
Yeah,
take them out for a beer or a coffee so that you've got that backdoor knowledge and you
yeah.
don't have to look through
And,
official channels every time.
yeah, and I'm famous for calling them up and saying, I've got a project and this is what we want to do. Are you going to be okay with that? So my advice is actually call people up and ask them. Don't
Yeah.
assume you know the answer because part of being a great designer is doing the research to get there. So, okay.
So
Um,
if you want to just give me a second, Leslie, sorry, Lexi, and I will, I got a couple of comments to make here at the end, and then we'll flip right over to questions and we'll talk because we got 14 minutes left here. We'll dive into just answering straight questions. So, um, when it comes to doing projects, um, start simple. Don't try to, um, over, overthink it. Um, the more experience you get, the more difficult projects you can get. If you're in over your head, ask a friend, call up someone who's done it before, call up the contractor that you've been working with that's really good at it. Um, get some help on it. And the more projects you do, the easier it'll get. And it's just practice, practice, practice. Going and watching water flow in a backyard. It's raining, you just sit there and you learn how water flows. Grading is easy, water flows downhill. Um, I think a lot of people are getting hung up on the math. Um, this is the calculation right here, and I can't see my screen but it is difference in elevation over slope times length. So that's difference in elevation over length gives you slope, or difference in elevation over slope gives you length. It's math, so you can go back and forth. Slope times length equals difference in elevation. So those are all things that you got to know that to make it work. So today we discussed sort of why designers struggle, and I hope that we came up with some tools. You saw my approach to attacking it, but I think every successful design needs to start with a grading plan so that you can understand it's not a flat site. I don't know how many jobs that I've been to before we started doing grading plans on every site. You'd build it and you have a planting bed that's blocking the outlet of the water, and so you have to add in a little swale. But it's knowing that you have to do that before when you're doing the drawing so that you're not, ruining your design because it doesn't work And I think that's what really happens is that you actually ruin a design when it doesn't work with grading. So your drainage has to work to have a successful design. So throw me your questions and I'll see what else I can answer here for you.
So we did have a question, and a few of us were commenting on this. We will share it. So somebody asked, what happens when you're working with a client that does not have a survey? And I actually posted. There is a website called Protect Your Boundaries, and it is a Canadian site that you can actually search for a survey. And it may just be basic plain house with some property lines, but you can search there. There is a cost to purchase the survey, which would turn back to your client, but I just want you to know. So it's called Protect Your Boundaries is the name of the site.
Um, yeah, and what I often do is the worst case scenario is you have to charge them more for your design, probably as much as your design, to do the surveying. You can hire a surveyor, which will cost even more. Um, or you can call up the city planning department because they will have something on file on newer homes. You get into the really old ones and they don't. But the city usually has something on file. Now, I went to the city office in Center Wellington once, and I don't do a lot of work in Center Wellington. And the building official actually ripped it out of a book and gave it to me. And I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. So in the end, I gave it to the client, said, this is yours. I do have a list of questions here that were thrown out when we first set this up.
Yeah, I dive into those. So what do we got here, Dave?
One of them that jumped up to me here, which was, should an underground pipe diverting roof water away from a building be left buried, or should it be lifted to the grade at the end? Um, Absolutely, your drain pipe needs to daylight. That's what they call it, technical terms. Your pipe needs to daylight. Absolutely, it needs to daylight. I run into this all the time. They run a piece of big old pipe, a weeping pipe, and they think, well, it's just going to percolate. Well, it might in some soils, but with the rains we've been having and these, heavy rains, systems will not keep up. A percolation system will not keep up with the rainwater we get right now. So always, always, always have your pipes daylighting somewhere. That creates a whole nother level of problems. And yes, they do freeze. At the top end of any, we were talking about grading. This is a drainage issue, but it's a question a thing I see poorly done on a lot of jobs. I always have a clean out, an open clean out at the downspout. So you have your downspout connector into a Y so that if the water's not running down, there's a chance for it to run out through the clean out because they do freeze. Guaranteed it's going to freeze.
So I have to ask, because I've never heard this, what is a pop-up valve? Jeff made a comment about a pop-up valve. I've never heard that term
So I've
before.
used them. I don't like them. I'm
What
afraid.
are they? So start
So
first, what is
it's
it?
a device where the water. So it looks like it's an elbow, so a pipe elbow with a little valve on the top that pops up. So when the water runs down, it pops up the valve and the water runs out.
Oh,
My
okay,
fear
that's
with
kind of
that,
cool.
my fear with that is that it freezes.
Right.
And now your whole pipe is going to freeze solid all the way up.
With the pipe below grade, though, I have one of my own property. We
Yeah,
install them here in Ottawa all the time. And yeah, everything is frozen in the winter, so we don't have to worry about it. This is the time year when they really become active, when
yeah,
you get freeze thaw cycles. And there might be a day or two where the water does not go through the buried pipe because it's all frozen.
yeah,
And it really only lasts about a day or two, and then the whole system opens up, and now
yeah.
all your water stays below grade. And for most part, you're using a perforated line below grade unless it's below hardscaping, where it's a solid pipe then. And the pop-up valves themselves, the elbow has a little relief hole, so water will always continually drain out below grade if there's not enough water pressure to push it up.
So I just did a system, and I don't use the pop-up valve because I don't trust it that it's gonna not freeze. But um, what I do, and I never use perforated pipe when I'm trying to carry water from point A to point B, because I want to get it away from the house.
Mhm.
And I'll go to when I just designed it the other day, I'll go to a soakaway pit. So we'll take the excavator, we'll dig down 4 or 5 feet, and fill it full of
Yeah,
gravel, and we'll run that pipe, a solid pipe, into a lawn basin, and we'll cut the bottom off the lawn basin. So now
yeah,
the water is running into that lawn basin, down into the soakaway pit, which is hidden from, so on the grass view, all you see is the top of that drain cover. But that drain cover allows the water to come back out again, just like the pop-up. But
yeah,
now you're giving a system for the water to soak away.
yeah.
If you're in clay soils, it takes a long time for it to soak away. I did a backyard once where it was a bowl. You could not get out of the backyard. And I put all of the roof water into a soakaway pit that when we dug down through the soil and the rubble and the bullshit that was there, we hit sand.
Mm.
And the client called me and said, I didn't believe this was going to work. But I'm standing here watching the water thundering down, and it's not coming up through that drain grate that you put in the backyard. It is soaking away just as fast as it's coming down. So when you get the right conditions, soak away pits work.
Yeah,
Always a little
and
in
I
your
know
book.
someone had a question earlier about the Fusion Landscape Professional course. Highly recommend it. I don't know who that person was, but it teaches you lots of ways to deal with water and grading, how to deal with them the right way, because pop-up is one answer, soak-away pits are another answer, infiltration trenches. There's many different avenues to go with grading and drainage of water.
And there's some more questions here that talk about the two soakaway pits, and I'm always leery about like these programs. That there was one in Waterloo region where they had first year university students going around and telling homeowners how to do um, pro- um, drainage solutions for their property, and a lot of it was doing soakaway pits, and people were putting soakaway pits right against the foundation of their house.
No.
You're just putting the water back into the footing and causing issues. You want to get those soakaway pits as far away from your house far away from your house and your neighbor's house as
Yeah,
possible, into a front corner, back corner, wherever it happens to be. Avoid the utilities. Get it down as deep as you can get it. Um, you want to be above the water table, obviously, but you want to get below clay layers if they're there. Sometimes you're in a clay neighborhood, but you dig down 4 feet and you break through that clay, and then you're into a sand layer, and now your water just disappears. But if you
yeah,
try and put it into that clay pot up above, I see um, so many plants like and permeable driveways were something that drove me nuts because people putting in permeable driveways on a site that you're in a clay neighborhood, now you're just putting water into the base of your driveway and your driveway is going to go like this. And it
yeah.
does.
So there, I see Blake has his hand up. So is that because you're waving your hands around, or did you have a question?
I think he's got a question.
I have a question.
Oh,
Dave,
good.
how often do you do soil studies with your customers when you're getting into soakaway pits? Because that's kind of, obviously you want to sort of assume or, go with best case scenario, other than, sticking a shovel in the ground sort of thing. How often do you get requested or do you cover yourself in like a terms and conditions kind of thing to
So
sort
let
of,
me give you the short answer. Like
yeah.
I never get soil tests done, um, because I've never had to do that. But what I do is I design a system that works both ways. So every system, like we talked earlier, we were talking about, well, the system's all frozen in the winter. Well, winter becomes a whole nother disaster. But to answer your question first, Blake, by doing a soakaway pit, you're going to start digging. If you go down 4 feet every time, well, maybe that clay layer only goes 4 feet. Maybe it's 10 feet deep. Well, I'm not going to dig a 10-foot hole. So what I've created is a clay pot. But what I'm going to do is allow that water to get out. and it still needs to flow into a swale and into the regional drainage system, which every neighborhood has some kind of regional drainage system. Whether in old neighborhoods, it's the creek or the swamp at the back, or in a subdivision, it's running into a catch basin 2 doors down. So you do what you can in the space you have, but then you always have to deal with the overflow, and you have to assume that there's going to be an overflow. And so that covers your butt. I actually don't need to know what the gravels are or what the soils are like. I'm going to build a really nice soak away pit, and it's either going to go through that clay or it'll go through the clay eventually. But I mean, it's either going to sit there and then you give it the relief to get out. Back to my early comment about winter, I remember one winter, it was in January and everything was frozen. We had like snow drifts, the snow drift angled towards the house, frozen solid as ice, and we had a rainstorm in January. And I was getting calls from people that were looking out their basement windows with little fish swimming around in the window wells, water flowing in through window wells everywhere, because it doesn't matter what your grading is on the ground if your snowbanks are all pointed towards your house. And that's not anything that we as landscape professionals can deal with. Like I've had clients say, well, it's your fault. You designed it wrong. Like, no, actually, look at it. It all drains away right now. It was in the winter, the snowdrift, water flowing into your whatever. So things completely change in the wintertime. And I don't know that we have a solution for that.
Yeah. Yeah, we ran into an issue a few years back where we were pinned in the backyard between like a garage with a fixed sort of elevation and everything like the driveway, and all 3 surrounding yards all like drained towards this floor sort of thing. So we had to do like a fairly serious catch basin sort of thing. And then
absolutely,
as we got into it, it was like we should hire an engineer. We hired an engineer, and they wanted like basically the entire yard to be this, like an eco block system, and we compromised that halfway there sort of thing. And because there was really nowhere to sort of emit, like once if it were to fill up and overflow, there was nowhere to sort of emit the water. It was a really tricky situation. And, I mean, knock on wood, we haven't had, there hasn't been any issues, but just, that was the next level was sort of like, do we get soil samples and do engineering? And just curious if that was something
that's a site specific situation where I would do that, because you're looking for the most economical solution to this. Basically, you've got a basin and you've got what they call in the geography world a sink, where all the land is sloping toward. That's where the swamps. That's why you've got swamps, and that all is what recharges the aquifers, is a sink in the landscape. But if you got a backyard, you don't want backyards to be a sink. Like it's the low point. All the neighborhoods, all the neighbors are all going into your backyard. You want to get that water out of there. So that's going to cost money, no matter what. Yeah, maybe, digging up the driveway and putting a pipe out, and it's getting, all right, maybe just building up your backyard so you're not the lowest anymore. We've done that too.
I would say this is a big topic, and I did have a number of people actually ask about permeable pavers and using them as a solution for drainage. I would like to thank Dave. This was incredible because grading is a challenging piece for a lot of people, and being able to see how to make all the grades work. And there's a lot of chatter that actually happened behind the scenes that Beth and I were answering some questions as well as you. So thank you so much for doing that. I wish everybody a great afternoon.
Before everybody goes, if you want more information on this, you want to reach out to me, you can get me at davew@wrightlandscape.ca. I will answer your questions. I believe that as a profession, whether you're a landscape architect or a landscape designer, we all make each other better by raising the bar. That's why we're all here today. So I'm willing to, if you got questions, want a drainage review on something, or a grading review, I'll help you out with that. So.
Oh, Dave, that's a lovely offer. Thank you. So, okay. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye, guys. Enjoy Enjoy the day.